Hi, this is David. Welcome to a video review for Alan Malz and his textbook, Financial Risk Management. We're in topic 7, and this video is a review of his chapter 12, which is called Liquidity and Leverage. And this chapter covers a lot of material. As reflected, you can see in the long list of learning objectives. And for that reason, we've broken the video up into 3 sections. So you're currently viewing the first section, and when it concludes, then you'll see in the study planner, you can pick up in the second section and then even the third section. So it's such a long chapter that we decided to break it up, and we'll start here in section 1, which is the really conceptual or a qualitative introduction primarily to liquidity in Alan Malz. And then in section 2, it's really about leverage. And then in section 3, we'll go back to liquidity and it becomes quantitative. You can see here there's a calculate action verb, and we'll look at the calculation of liquidity adjusted VAR. So let's go ahead and start with the first learning objective, which is differentiate between sources of liquidity risk and explain how each of these risks can arise for financial institutions. So Alan Malz divides liquidity risk up into 2 different types: transaction liquidity and funding liquidity. So transaction liquidity is the property of an asset being easy to exchange for other assets. So in Jorian, we have different terms for this. Jorian calls this asset liquidity risk, or also refers to it as market/product liquidity risk. So just to be aware, some synonyms there. And then we have funding liquidity risk, also has a synonym with balance sheet liquidity. This is the ability to finance assets continuously at an acceptable borrowing rate. So transaction liquidity is more of a product asset. So left-hand side of the balance sheet perspective, can we realize the value of these assets if we need to sell them? Funding liquidity risk is more concerned with the right-hand side of the balance sheet. Are we able to finance or roll over the liabilities as sources of funds? As with liquidity, the term liquidity risk is used to describe several distinct but related phenomenon. Transaction liquidity risk, as we said, is the risk of moving the price of an asset adversely in the act of buying or selling it. Transaction liquidity risk is low if assets can be liquidated, or a position can be covered quickly, cheaply, and without moving the price too much. So this may seem familiar. We're here in topic 7 because this is also a concept that's in the Kevin Dowd reading, where he divides liquidity risk into exogenous, which would be as measured by the bid-ask spread, and endogenous. And so this specific description of transaction liquidity risk would be a lot like Dowd's endogenous liquidity risk, which is to say there is an endogenous liquidity risk if we have a position that's large relative to the over market, such that selling it would cause the price to go down, or in more practical terms, we aren't able to sell it all immediately without triggering a downward push in the price. So when there is endogenous liquidity risk, more realistically, that position has to be exited over time, maybe several days.